Dr. Ju Park couldn't believe her eyes. After 10 long years, Project Terraformer was finally ready. She watched the blue hologram of the massive sphere rotate slowly in front of her, showing every detail of what would soon become humanity's greatest achievement. "I still remember when they laughed at us," she said quietly. Her fingers moved through the hologram, revealing layer after layer of the internal systems. The Conclave aliens still think humans are hundreds of years away from being able to move planets. Admiral Taehyun Kim stood beside her, his old face showing a rare smile. For once, the lines around his eyes crinkled with happiness instead of worry. "Let them think that," he said. "Their underestimation is our greatest weapon." The year was 2275. Humans had spread to nearby stars, building colonies on distant worlds. But in the wider galaxy, Earth was still seen as the new kid on the block. The Conclave of Species, a gathering of the oldest and most powerful alien civilizations, barely gave humans a second glance. To them, humans were primitive creatures who had stumbled onto the galactic stage too early. Ju zoomed in on the propulsion system. The engines were unlike anything humans had built before. They would need to move something as massive as Ceres. The hardest part wasn't the technology, she explained to Taehyun. It was changing how we think. Everyone else tries to overcome gravity with brute force. We decided to work with it instead. Taehyun nodded. Elegantly simple, once you see it, but no one else thought of it. The next day, they presented the final plans to Earth's Security Council. The meeting room was tense. Reports had been coming in for months about alien ships moving closer to human colonies. Several smaller outposts had already gone silent. "We need this deterrent now," said the council leader. "How soon can Project Terraformer be operational?" 6 months, Ju answered. "We've been building components in secret for years. They just need to be assembled at Ceres." The decision was unanimous. Within days, massive cargo ships began departing Earth, carrying the final pieces needed to transform a dwarf planet into humanity's first planetary warship. Ju spent the next 6 months in a small station orbiting Ceres. Day and night blended together as thousands of engineers worked to bring her design to life. They burrowed deep into the planet's surface, installing power cores that would harness the natural heat of the core. They built engine clusters at carefully calculated points around the surface. They wrapped the entire dwarf planet in a network of sensors and defensive systems. Not everything went smoothly. 3 engineers died when a power coupling exploded. An entire section had to be rebuilt when structural supports failed. Twice, the project almost ran out of critical materials. But eventually, the day of the first test arrived. Ju stood at the window of a small ship positioned safely away from Ceres. Her hands shook slightly as she gave the activation command. At first, nothing seemed to happen. Ceres hung in space, looking much as it had for billions of years. Then a faint blue glow began to spread across its surface. The glow brightened, concentrated around the massive engine ports. "Energy readings are stable," reported a technician. "All systems nominal." Ju held her breath. This was the moment everything could go wrong. If the gravitational calculations were off by even a tiny amount, Ceres could tear itself apart. A low vibration passed through her observation ship. On the surface of Ceres, the engines flared to brilliant life. Slowly, almost imperceptibly at first, the dwarf planet began to move. Cheers erupted around her. 10 years of work, countless failures, and now success. Tears filled Ju's eyes as she watched Ceres accelerate gently, precisely following the path she had calculated years ago. "Movement confirmed," said the flight controller. "We have controlled motion." Repeating. "Project Terraformer is a success." Admiral Taehyun Kim's voice came through the comm system. "Congratulations, Dr. Park. The HUS Artemis is born. The human warship Artemis, Earth's first planet-sized battleship." Ju knew that what they had created was more than just a weapon. It was a statement. For too long, Humans had been dismissed and overlooked. The Conclave species thought they knew humanity's capabilities. They were about to learn how wrong they were. Over the next few weeks, more systems came online. Defensive shields capable of absorbing tremendous energy. Weapon arrays that could target with pinpoint accuracy. Engines that could move a planetary mass through both normal space and hyperspace jumps. 1 month after the initial test, Juwu stood on the newly constructed command center buried deep within Artemis. Around her, hundreds of crew members worked at their stations, learning how to control the most powerful vessel ever built by human hands. Final systems check complete, reported the chief engineer. All green. Artemis is fully operational. Admiral Kim turned to Juwu. The Xendari Empire has begun moving ships toward our colony at New Eden. Intelligence suggests they plan to attack within the month. Juwu nodded. The Xendari were one of the more aggressive species in the Conclave. They had been pushing at the borders of human space for years, treating diplomatic meetings with open contempt. They still think we only have conventional ships, she said. They have no idea what's coming. Exactly, said Taeyun with a grim smile. Artemis will remain in stealth mode until the moment we need her. When the Xendari attack New Eden, they'll discover that humans aren't as helpless as they thought. Juwu looked around the command center, at the men and women preparing for a conflict none of them had wanted. She had built Artemis hoping it would never need to fight. But if war came, humanity would be ready. Send word to the other construction sites, she told Taeyun. Tell them to accelerate work on Ares, Athena, and Apollo. If one planet ship can change the balance of power, imagine what 4 can do. As Artemis powered up its hyperspace engines for its first long-range jump, Juwu felt a mixture of pride and apprehension. The galaxy was about to learn that humanity was not to be underestimated. No one was ready for what humans had built. No one was ready for Artemis. Captain Minhyuk Ryu stood on the bridge of his ship, the New Hope, the largest defender in New Eden's small fleet. His hands gripped the command rail tightly as he watched the tactical display. Red dots appeared one after another as the Xendari warships emerged from hyperspace above the colony world. Count now at 47 enemy vessels, reported his sensor officer, Do-Yun, his voice shaking slightly. Their main battleship is 3 kilometers long. Minhyuk felt his stomach sink. New Eden had only 6 defense ships, none larger than 500 meters. The colony had been established 30 years ago, home to over 20 million people. Farmers, teachers, children, none of them soldiers. They're hailing us, said Sungmin, the communications officer. The main screen flickered to life, showing the face of a Xendari commander. Their species had evolved from predators. Sharp teeth lined their wide mouths, and 4 yellow eyes blinked independently across their scaled faces. Human vessels, the Xendari said, not bothering with pleasantries. This is Commander Taskmaster of the Imperial Conquest Fleet. Your colony occupies space claimed by the Xendari Empire. You will evacuate immediately. Minhyuk stepped forward. Commander, New Eden is a recognized human settlement. We have lived here peacefully for 3 decades. The Conclave of Species has acknowledged our claim. The Xendari made a sharp hissing sound, their version of dismissive laughter. The Conclave has no authority in this region. Humans are temporary residents in our galaxy, not equals. You have 6 hours to begin evacuation. After that time, we will commence orbital bombardment. The screen went dark before Minhyuk could respond. Can we evacuate in 6 hours? Asked his second-in-command. Minhyuk shook his head. 20 million people. We'd need weeks, even if we had enough ships, which we don't. He closed his eyes briefly. Send a distress call to Earth, encrypted on the emergency channel. As the minutes ticked by, the Xendari ships moved into attack positions above the major population centers. On the colony below, panic spread as the evacuation order went out. People crowded into spaceports, knowing there weren't nearly enough ships to save everyone. 5 hours after the ultimatum, Minhyuk received the reply from Earth Command. "Help is coming. Hold position." What kind of help? Wondered his tactical officer. Even if they dispatch the entire home fleet, they can't get here for at least 3 days. Minhyuk had no answer. He ordered his 6 ships to form a defensive line between the Exendary fleet and the largest city below. It was a symbolic gesture at best. They couldn't stop the coming slaughter. As the 6-hour deadline approached, the Exendary ships began powering up their weapon systems. Minhyuk gave the order for his crew to prepare for combat, knowing it would be their last stand. "Sir," shouted Do-Yun suddenly, "something's coming through hyperspace." "Earth ships?" Minhyuk asked, hope rising in his chest. "No, sir. The mass readings. This can't be right." Do-Yun looked up from his console, face pale. "Whatever's coming through, it's the size of a small planet." The space above New Eden rippled and distorted. Hyperspace jumps usually created a small tear in spacetime, just large enough for a ship to pass through. But this was like watching the fabric of reality being ripped wide open. And then it appeared. Not a ship, at least not in any conventional sense. A world. A planet wrapped in metallic bands and dotted with structures across its surface. Blue energy glowed from massive engine ports. Weapons platforms the size of cities protruded from its crust. "My God," whispered Minhyuk. "Is that Ceres?" The planet ship positioned itself between the colony and the Exendary fleet. For a moment, everything went still as both sides processed what they were seeing. The Exendary recovered first. Their flagship sent out a burst transmission. "Unidentified vessel, remove yourself from our operation zone immediately or be destroyed." There was no response from the planet ship. The Exendary commander, apparently enraged by the silence, gave the order to attack. 47 warships opened fire simultaneously, pouring energy beams and missiles toward the massive newcomer. Weapons designed to shatter conventional starships struck the planet's surface. Explosions bloomed across its dark exterior, and then faded away, leaving no visible damage. "It absorbed everything," said Do-Yun in disbelief. "Not even their heavy weaponry left a mark." Then the planet ship responded. From precise points across its surface, blue energy beams lanced out, each targeting a different Exendary vessel. But these weren't the kind of destructive beams Minhyuk expected. Instead of cutting through the ships, the energy seemed to wrap around them, creating a web-like pattern. One by one, the lights on the Exendary vessels went out. Their weapons powered down. Their engines died. Within 3 minutes, all 47 ships were drifting helplessly in space, completely disabled but not destroyed. A transmission came through on all frequencies, originating from the planet ship. A human voice, calm and authoritative. "This is Admiral Jinsu Lee of the Human Federation warship Artemis. Your weapons are disabled. Your engines are disabled. You will power down remaining systems and prepare to be boarded." The Exendary commander appeared on screen again, his yellow eyes wide with shock. "What is this? What have you done?" Gone was the arrogance from earlier. Now there was only confusion and fear. "We have neutralized your threat," Admiral Lee replied simply. "Your ships will be towed to a secure location. Your crews will be treated according to Conclave protocols for prisoners of war." "This is impossible," sputtered the Exendary. "No species has the technology to move planets, let alone weaponize them." "Humans do," came the simple reply. Minhyuk watched in awe as smaller craft began launching from bays on Artemis, ships sent to secure the Exendary vessels and rescue the New Eden colony. His tactical officer was already receiving data about the planet ship. Ceres, transformed into humanity's first planetary warship, with defenses that could absorb the combined firepower of an entire battle fleet without damage. "Captain," said his communications officer, "you need to see this." The battle was transmitted live across all Conclave channels. Every species in the galaxy just watched what happened here. Minhyuk understood the implications immediately. For decades, humans had been dismissed as newcomers, barely tolerated by the older species who dominated galactic politics. But now, humanity had revealed technology that no one thought possible for thousands of years. As Artemis began deploying defensive satellites around New Eden, Minyuk received a private message from Admiral Lee. "This is just the beginning. Ares, Athena, and Apollo are coming online. Tell your colonists they're safe now, and will remain so." Across the galaxy, the footage of a planet ship defeating a battle fleet without destroying the single vessel spread rapidly. The message was clear. Humanity was not the primitive species everyone had assumed. They had changed the balance of power in a single day. And no one was ready for what would come next. The grand meeting hall of the Conclave of Species shimmered with tension. Representatives from 27 different alien civilizations sat in tiered seating around a central platform. Some were humanoid, others insect-like or completely unlike anything from Earth. They all shared one thing. They were upset. On the massive screen floating above the chamber floor, footage of the New Eden incident played for the third time. The images showed the planet-sized HFY Artemis emerging from hyperspace and disabling 47 secondary warships without destroying a single one. "This is clearly fake," shouted the secondary representative, Vorax, his scaled skin flushing deep red with anger. "Humans lack the technology to move planets." The Tellurian ambassador, a being made of living rock, rumbled in disagreement. "The energy signatures have been verified. This is genuine footage." "Then it's a trick," insisted another representative, "a hologram or some kind of mass hallucination technology." The chamber erupted into arguments. Some species sided with the secondary, claiming the footage must be fabricated. Others insisted it was real and demanded immediate action against the human threat. At the center of the chamber stood the Arbiter, a 12-foot-tall crystalline being who had served as the Conclave's mediator for over 2 centuries. Light refracted through the Arbiter's body as they raised 4 glittering arms. "Order." The Arbiter's voice resonated throughout the chamber, silencing all other voices. "We will have order in this assembly." The room quieted, though tension still hung heavy in the air. "The humans have been summoned to explain themselves," continued the Arbiter. "They will enter now." The main doors slid open. Dr. Ju Park and Admiral Taehyun Kim walked into the chamber side by side. Ju looked small and fragile compared to many of the alien representatives, but she carried herself with calm confidence. Admiral Kim wore his formal uniform, his face showing no emotion as they crossed to the central platform. For the first time in Conclave history, humans commanded the complete attention of the assembly. Not a sound could be heard as Ju and Taehyun reached the speaker's position. "Distinguished representatives of the Conclave," Ju began, her voice amplified throughout the chamber. "We understand your concern regarding recent events at New Eden Colony." "Concern?" hissed Vorax, the secondary representative. "You deployed a planet as a weapon." The Arbiter silenced him with a gesture. "Continue, Dr. Park." Ju nodded. "What you witnessed in the footage was the human warship Artemis, the first of our planetary defense platforms. It was deployed to protect our colony from unprovoked aggression." First, the question came from the Meldari ambassador, a being with blue skin and multiple eye stalks that all focused intently on Ju. "Your words suggest there are more." Admiral Kim stepped forward. "Yes, we have constructed 4 such vessels: Artemis, Ares, Athena, and Apollo." The chamber exploded into chaos again. Some representatives jumped to their feet, others pounded on their consoles. The secondary delegate was shouting about existential threats to the galaxy. 3 ambassadors were demanding that the technology be immediately surrendered to the Conclave for safekeeping. Silence. The Arbiter's voice cut through the noise. When quiet returned, they turned to the humans. "You claim to have achieved in decades what took other species millennia of development. How is this possible?" Ju took a deep breath. This was the question she had prepared for most carefully. While others tried to overcome natural laws with brute force, we worked with them, she explained. We didn't build ships the size of planets. We built ships from planets. She activated a small device on her wrist. A holographic display appeared, showing simplified schematics of Artemis. Instead of fighting gravity, we harnessed it. Instead of constructing artificial gravity wells, we used what already existed. The breakthrough wasn't technological advancement. It was perspective. The Tellurian ambassador leaned forward. You're saying the solution was simple. Not simple, corrected Juwu. Different. Where others saw obstacles, we saw opportunities. The Arbiter studied the schematics with their crystalline eyes. These vessels, you call them warships. Yet at New Eden, Artemis disabled rather than destroyed the Xendari fleet. What is their true purpose? Admiral Kim answered, protection. Humanity has been dismissed and threatened since joining the galactic community. We built these vessels to ensure our survival. They are planet killers, shouted Vorax. One could destroy an entire homeworld. They could, admitted Kim. But that is not our intention. Had it been, the Xendari fleet would not exist now. The chamber fell quiet as everyone considered this truth. The Artemis had shown restraint when it could have easily destroyed its opponents. We request private deliberation, the Arbiter announced after a long moment. The human representatives will wait outside. As Juwu and Taehyun left the chamber, they could hear the heated debate resuming behind them. In the waiting area, they found Hyunju Seo, Earth's diplomatic attaché. How did it go? Hyunju asked anxiously. About as expected, replied Taehyun. Shock, disbelief, then fear. Juwu looked out the large window that overlooked the Conclave capital city. The massive structures of the galactic government complex stretched for miles, housing representatives from hundreds of species. For decades, humans had been relegated to the smallest offices in the least desirable section. Everything changes today, she said quietly. 3 hours later, they were called back into the chamber. The mood had shifted. There was less shouting, more calculating looks. The Arbiter spoke first. The Conclave has reached no consensus regarding the human planet ships. However, we acknowledge your right to self-defense. We request full technical inspections of these vessels to ensure they comply with Conclave safety protocols. Admiral Kim shook his head. With respect, we must decline. The technical specifications remain classified. This caused another stir in the chamber, but not as violent as before. Many representatives now looked thoughtful rather than outraged. The Tellurian ambassador raised a rocky hand. Earth has previously requested membership on the Defense Council. I move that this request be granted immediately. Vorax hissed in protest, but several other representatives nodded in agreement. As they left the chamber after the session concluded, Juwu noticed representatives from various species approaching Hyunju with requests for private meetings. Some were offering trade agreements, others military alliances. Species that had ignored humanity for years were suddenly eager to become friends. It's beginning, said Taehyun as they walked toward the Earth Embassy. The political landscape is shifting. Not everyone is happy about it. Juwu pointed out, nodding toward a group of representatives huddled in discussion. The Xendari among them, along with 4 other militaristic species. No, agreed Taehyun. The Xendari are humiliated. They won't forget that. They'll gather allies who fear our new power, and they'll plan. Let them plan, said Juwu. Artemis was just the beginning. Wait until they see what Ares, Athena, and Apollo can do. As their shuttle departed the Conclave station, news was already spreading throughout the galaxy. Humanity, long dismissed as newcomers, had changed the balance of power overnight. Some civilizations rushed to establish new friendships with these suddenly formidable humans. Others began plotting how to contain or control this new threat. No one would underestimate humanity again. 1 year had passed since the confrontation at the Conclave. Dr. Juwu Park stood in the massive command center deep within Artemis, Watching reports flood in from across human space. The screens showed the same story at 7 different colonies. Massive enemy fleets dropping out of hyperspace, weapons already firing. The Senderi Coalition has launched their attack, said Admiral Taehyun Kim, his face grim. Just as intelligence predicted. Ju-woo nodded. For months, the Senderi had been gathering allies, species who feared humanity's planet ships or coveted their technology. Now that coalition had struck, hitting multiple human worlds at once. Casualties? She asked. Minimal so far, replied Lieutenant Yuma Choi, monitoring the tactical display. We had enough warning to begin evacuations of the outer settlements, but Harmony, New Terra, Proxima Colony, and Frontier Station are all heavily populated. We can't move everyone. Ju-woo studied the strategic map. Artemis was currently positioned near Harmony, the largest human colony outside the Sol system. 3 million people lived there. The other planet ships were spread across human space. Status of our other vessels? Asked Admiral Kim. Ares has engaged the enemy at New Terra, reported Yuna. Athena is deploying fighter squadrons at Proxima Colony. Apollo is manufacturing defensive platforms for Frontier Station. Each planet ship had been designed with different specialties. Artemis excelled at defense, its shields capable of absorbing incredible amounts of energy. Ares was built for offense, covered in weapon systems that could strike with precision across vast distances. Athena served as a carrier, housing thousands of smaller fighter craft. Apollo functioned as a mobile factory, able to produce ships, weapons, and supplies wherever needed. The Harmony fleet reports enemy ships breaking through the outer defense line, said Yuma. Coalition forces are approaching the planet. Move Artemis into position, ordered Kim. Standard defense protocol. The massive engines of Artemis rumbled to life. Even after a year, Ju-woo still marveled at how quickly the planet ship could maneuver. Sensor operators guided them into position between the Coalition fleet and Harmony. The enemy ships opened fire immediately. Energy beams and missiles struck Artemis's shields, creating ripples of blue light across the surface. But nothing got through. Shield integrity at 97%, reported the defense officer. No damage to internal systems. Similar reports came in from the other battle sites. Ares had destroyed 30 coalition ships at New Terra. Athena's fighters had established air superiority over Proxima. Apollo had constructed a defensive ring around Frontier Station in record time. But the initial human advantage didn't last. The coalition had brought overwhelming numbers. For every ship destroyed, 3 more took its place. They had clearly been preparing for this war since the moment Artemis first appeared. 2 weeks into the conflict, Ju-woo met with the other planet ship commanders via secure hologram. The situation was growing dire. They've adapted their tactics, reported Admiral Jin-Soo Lee from Ares. They no longer try to attack us directly. Instead, they bypass us to hit the colonies, forcing us to chase them. Captain Subin Kang of Athena nodded. And they're using hyperspace jumps to hit targets faster than we can respond. Even moving at full speed, we can't be everywhere at once. How do you besiege a mobile fortress? Mused Commander Min Jin-yoon of Apollo. Simple. You ignore the fortress and attack what it's protecting. Ju-woo understood the problem clearly. The planet ships were nearly invincible in direct combat, but there were only 4 of them defending dozens of colonies across multiple star systems. The war stretched on for months. Human colonies fell back on pre-planned evacuation routes. The planet ships moved constantly, appearing wherever the threat was greatest. Sometimes they arrived just in time to save a colony. Other times, they found only ruins. 3 months into the war, Ju-woo was awakened in the middle of the night by an urgent alert. Lieutenant Yuna rushed into her quarters. "Doctor, we've detected something strange at the Coalition staging area," she said, handing Ju-woo a datapad. "Energy readings unlike anything we've seen before." Ju-woo studied the readings, her blood running cold. "Wake Admiral Kim. Call an emergency meeting with all planet ship commanders. Now." An hour later, Ju-woo explained what they had found. The Coalition has built a superweapon, a gravitational disruptor. It generates artificial gravity waves that can tear apart planetary bodies. Can it affect our ships? Asked Captain Subin. Yes, said Juwu grimly. Our entire advantage is based on using planetary mass. This weapon turns that against us. One hit could potentially crack a planet ship in half. The room fell silent as everyone processed this news. Their invincible vessels suddenly seemed vulnerable. We need to coordinate, Juwu finally said. Not just in strategy, but physically. What do you mean? Asked Admiral Jinsu. Juwu activated a holographic display. I propose bringing all 4 planet ships together in a tetrahedron formation. We position ourselves at precisely calculated points where our gravitational fields overlap and reinforce each other. Is that possible? Asked Commander Minjin. The gravitational calculations would be incredibly complex. I've been working on this contingency plan since we built the ships, Juwu replied. The math works. Together, our combined gravitational field will be stable enough to resist the disruptor. The plan was approved. Over the next week, all 4 planet ships disengaged from their positions and rendezvoused at the chosen coordinates. It was a risky maneuver. Many colonies were left temporarily undefended. But if they lost the planet ships, they would lose the war. As expected, coalition forces noticed the movement. Their massive fleets converged on the location where the 4 planet ships were gathering. Among them was a strange vessel, elongated and bristling with technology, clearly the gravitational disruptor. They're taking the bait, said Admiral Kim as they watched the enemy fleets approach. They think we're vulnerable during the rendezvous. Juwu supervised the complex positioning process. Each planet ship had to reach its exact coordinates at precisely the right moment. The slightest error could result in gravitational interference that would tear them all apart. Artemis in position, reported Yuna. Ares has reached its coordinates. Athena and Apollo approaching final positions now. The coalition fleet moved into attack formation. Their superweapon began to power up, energy readings climbing rapidly. Athena in position, came the report. Apollo locking into final coordinates now. The disruptor fired. A strange, distorting wave spread out from the coalition ship, warping space itself as it approached the 4 planet ships. Apollo in position. Tetrahedron formation complete, shouted Yuna. The gravitational disruptor wave struck the combined field generated by the 4 planet ships and shattered against it. The reinforced gravitational harmony created by the tetrahedron formation held firm. All systems stable, reported Yuna. Looking stunned, the disruptor had no effect. Now it was humanity's turn to attack. From each vertex of the tetrahedron, the planet ships launched coordinated strikes. Artemis projected its shields around the entire formation. Ares targeted the coalition command ships with devastating precision. Athena launched fighter squadrons that seemed to appear from nowhere. Apollo deployed automated defense platforms that formed a secondary perimeter. The battle lasted hours, but the outcome was never in doubt. Unable to affect the planet ships with their superweapon, the coalition fleet broke against the impenetrable formation. Ship after ship fell to the coordinated assault. Finally, the disruptor vessel itself was disabled by a precise strike from Ares. As the remaining coalition ships retreated in disarray, the 4 planet ships maintained their tetrahedron formation, a new constellation in space, born from human ingenuity and cooperation. The tide of the war had turned. The Xendary Supreme Commander knelt before the human delegation in the great hall of the Conclave. His once proud yellow eyes were now downcast. Behind him stood representatives from 6 other species who had joined the coalition against humanity. We surrender completely and without conditions, the Xendary said, his voice carrying through the silent chamber. The coalition acknowledges defeat. It had been just 23 months since humans had first revealed the existence of their planet ships. In that short time, they had risen from being dismissed as galactic newcomers to becoming a major power that even the oldest civilizations now treated with respect and fear. Dr. Ju Park stood at the center of the human delegation. Her face showed no triumph or gloating as she accepted the surrender document. Instead, she looked almost sad. "The war is over," she announced to the packed chamber. "Now we must build a lasting peace." Admiral Taehyun Kim stood beside her, along with the commanders of all 4 planet ships. They had become legendary figures across the galaxy, the humans who commanded worlds. The Arbiter, still serving as the voice of the Conclave, stepped forward. "What terms does Earth demand from the defeated coalition?" Many in the chamber expected harsh punishments. The coalition had attacked human colonies without warning. They had targeted civilian populations. They had developed a superweapon specifically designed to destroy the planet ships. Chuwu's answer surprised everyone. "We demand no territory. We require no reparations. We seek no punishments," she said clearly. Then she pressed a button on her wrist device, activating the large holographic display above the chamber. Images appeared showing Ares, the weapon-covered planet ship that had destroyed hundreds of enemy vessels, now surrounded by construction equipment. Workers were dismantling its weapon systems. "Our planet ships were never designed primarily as weapons," Ju revealed, as gasps spread through the chamber. "Their true purpose is creation, not destruction." More images appeared. Artemis using its shields to contain the atmosphere of a dying world while evacuations took place. Athena's fighters constructing orbital habitats around an uninhabitable but resource-rich planet. Apollo producing not weapons but terraforming equipment on a massive scale. "We built these vessels as protection when we felt threatened," Ju continued. "But their real purpose has always been to create, not destroy. We invite all species, including our former enemies, to join us in this effort." The room fell silent as the implications became clear. Humanity hadn't just developed a new kind of weapon. They had created a new kind of tool, one that could reshape worlds. In the months that followed, the planet ships began their real mission. Artemis traveled to worlds devastated by natural disasters, using its shields to protect fragile ecosystems while they recovered. Ares, its weapons replaced with powerful drilling and mining systems, helped extract resources from dead worlds to build new habitats. Athena became a mobile repair yard, helping rebuild damaged stations and ships regardless of their origin. Apollo produced supplies and equipment for dozens of previously struggling colonies. Former enemies became cautious partners. The Xendari, experts in atmospheric chemistry, began working with humans on terraforming projects. Other coalition species offered their own unique knowledge, finding that cooperation brought benefits war never could. 5 years after the conflict ended, Ju stood in a garden aboard Artemis. Through the large viewport before her, she could see the surface of a once barren world, now covered with growing vegetation. Small lakes dotted the landscape where there had once been only dust. The first cities were taking shape, with construction crews working day and night. Admiral Taehyun Kim joined her, moving more slowly than he once had. Both of them now showed streaks of gray in their hair, the result of years of stress and hard work. "Remember when we first activated Artemis?" he asked, standing beside her at the viewport. "Everyone was so afraid of what we'd created." Ju nodded. "They had reason to be. We built something with the power to destroy worlds." "Was this your plan all along?" Taehyun asked, gesturing to the blooming world below. "To use the planet ships for creation instead of war?" "Yes and no," she replied. "I always hoped we'd use them this way, but I knew we might have to fight first." She turned to face the Admiral. "Humans have always built tools that could create or destroy. The Conclave saw us as primitive because we still wrestle with that duality. But that's our strength, not our weakness. We understand the responsibility of power because we've seen its cost." Below them, work continued on the new world. The construction crews were mixed. Humans working alongside Xendari, Tellurians building structures next to Meltari, former enemies now creating together. "The Conclave has approved our proposal for the New Worlds Initiative," said Taehyun. 15 more dead or dying planets approved for restoration. We're going to need more planet ships. Juwu smiled. The next generation is already under construction. Demeter, Hephaestus, Hermes, and Poseidon, each designed specifically for terraforming rather than adapted for it. She looked back out at the world they were bringing to life. We're not warriors at heart. We never were. We just needed to show the galaxy that we wouldn't be pushed around. A small transport ship passed by the viewport, carrying supplies to the surface. Its crew included members of 3 different species, all working together. When I first proposed Project Terraformer, Juwu said, most of the Security Council saw it as a weapon. They wanted something to make the other species fear us. And now? Asked Taiyun. Now they understand what I always knew. You don't earn respect through fear. You earn it by building something magnificent. As the sun rose over the new world below, casting golden light across the growing forests and rising buildings, Juwu thought about how far they had come. From being dismissed as primitive newcomers to reshaping the galaxy itself. We build big, she said quietly, because we dream big. Across the galaxy, the massive silhouettes of planet ships moved between stars. Once symbols of fear, they had transformed into beacons of hope. Wherever they went, they'd brought life to dead worlds and helped to struggling colonies. Species that had once fought bitter wars now worked side by side on grand projects. This was humanity's true legacy to the stars. Not conquest or domination, but the vision to create something no one else had imagined possible. The ability to turn weapons into tools, enemies into allies, and dead worlds into homes. The war had shown the galaxy humanity's power. Peace would show them humanity's heart. The end.